The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the dark void between star systems. Its metal corridors buzzed with activity as beings from across the galaxy gathered for an important meeting. The Galactic Ecological Survey happened every few months, and today was special. Each species would share information about the most dangerous hunters from their homeworlds. Commander Elena Vasquez walked through the station's wide hallways. Her boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. Other aliens moved around her, some floating, some crawling, some walking on more legs than she could count. Elena was the only human on the station. Earth had just joined the galactic community, and she was their first representative. The meeting room was huge. Hundreds of different alien species sat in chairs, pods, and tanks designed for their unique bodies. Elena found her small section marked Terra and sat down. She looked around at the amazing variety of life forms surrounding her. Some looked like giant insects, others like living crystals, and a few seemed to be made of pure energy. Ambassador Crix, a tall blue alien with 4 arms, stood at the front of the room. His voice echoed through translation devices that turned his words into sounds each species could understand. "Welcome to the Quarterly Ecological Survey," Crix announced. "Today we discuss the apex predators of our worlds. These creatures sit at the top of their food chains. They fear nothing and hunt everything. Understanding them helps us understand the dangers our explorers might face." The first speaker was from the Xanthari Empire. The alien looked like a walking crystal formation, with sharp edges that caught the light. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind blowing through caves. "On our world of Zenthkar, the greatest hunter is the crystal worm. It grows to 300 meters long and moves through solid rock like water. The creature senses vibrations through crystal formations across entire continents. No prey can hide from its hunt. It can sense a footstep from 1,000 kilometers away." The room filled with impressed sounds from various species. Elena watched as a holographic image showed the massive worm bursting from crystal formations to catch prey. Next came a representative from the Kethmar Collective. This alien was humanoid, but its head was twice the size of a human's, with large black eyes that seemed to look into souls. "The Void Stalker hunts on our moon worlds," the Kethmar said. "It reads minds and creates fear in its prey. The creature feeds on terror before feeding on flesh. It can make victims see their worst nightmares as reality. Many prey animals die from fear alone, making the hunt easier." More impressive sounds filled the room. Elena noted how each species seemed proud of their world's dangerous predators. The atmosphere swimmers came next. These beings looked like jellyfish but were the size of small buildings. They floated in special gas-filled chambers. In the gas clouds of our homeworld, the storm riders hunt. They are creatures of living lightning, moving at speeds that break the sound barrier. They can change their form to match storm patterns. Prey never sees them coming until electricity tears through their bodies. For hours, the presentations continued. Each species described predators that seemed impossible to Elena's human understanding. Creatures that could phase through matter, beasts that manipulated gravity, hunters that existed in multiple dimensions at once. The Thoric showed images of their bone crushers, massive creatures with jaws that could bite through starship hulls. The Nexali described their shadow weavers that lived in darkness and could stretch their bodies across kilometers. The Veltar spoke of their time stalkers that could slow down time around their prey. Elena listened carefully to each presentation. She took notes on a small device, but mostly she just watched and learned. These aliens came from worlds that seemed designed to create the most dangerous predators possible. Finally, Ambassador Crix turned to Elena's section. The room grew quiet as hundreds of alien eyes focused on the lone human. "Representative Vasquez from Terra," Crix said. "Your world is new to our community. We are eager to learn about your planet's apex predator. What creature rules the food chains of Earth?" Elena stood up slowly. She was much smaller than most beings in the room. Her simple uniform looked plain compared to the exotic appearances around her. She walked to the speaking area at the front of the room. The translator devices carried her voice clearly as she spoke. "Thank you, Ambassador Crix. Earth is indeed different from the worlds you've described today." She paused and looked around the room. Hundreds of alien faces watched her with curiosity. Some leaned forward in their seats, expecting to hear about some terrible Earth monster. "You've all described amazing predators," Elena continued. "Creatures with incredible abilities that your worlds created through millions of years of evolution. Crystal worms that move through solid rock, psychic hunters that feed on fear, Lightning beings that hunt in gas clouds. Elena smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile a predator might give when it spotted easy prey. You asked what creature stands as Terra's ultimate apex hunter, she said. Her voice stayed calm and steady. What beast sits at the top of our food chain? What predator our world has created? The room was completely silent now. Even the background humming of the station's machines seemed quieter. Elena raised her right hand and pointed directly at herself. That would be me, she said simply. For a moment, nobody moved. Then confused sounds began to ripple through the crowd. Some aliens looked at each other with expressions that clearly meant they thought the human had made a mistake. Ambassador Thexalon of the Zephyrian hive mind spoke first. He was an insect-like creature the size of a small vehicle. His voice buzzed with annoyance. Surely there has been a translation error, Thexalon said. You are indicating yourself as Terra's apex predator. This cannot be correct. You have no natural weapons, no armor plating, no specialized hunting organs. You appear to be a standard carbon-based bipedal life form. Other aliens began making their own comments. Helena could hear the translation devices working overtime as dozens of languages filled the air. Perhaps she means her species in general, suggested a Veltar representative. But humans are so small, added a Thoric, and soft. They have no claws or fangs. Where are the natural weapons? Asked a Zenthari. How do they crush prey? Elena waited for the noise to die down. She kept that same predatory smile on her face. There's no translation error, she said when the room grew quiet again. I am Terra's apex predator. My species is, we're not the biggest or strongest creatures on our world. We're not the fastest or most venomous, but we are the most dangerous. Ambassador Crix looked puzzled. His blue skin changed to a slightly darker shade, which Elena had learned meant confusion in his species. But how can this be possible? Crix asked. Every world produces apex predators through evolutionary pressure. They develop specialized hunting tools, enhanced senses, superior physical capabilities. You appear to have none of these advantages. Elena's smile grew wider. That's what makes us so dangerous, she said. We didn't need to evolve specialized tools for one environment. We evolved to be adaptable to any environment. We became generalists, not specialists, and that makes us the ultimate predator. The room buzzed with skeptical sounds. Elena could see that most of the aliens didn't believe her claims. Perhaps, said Thexalon, you would care to demonstrate these supposed hunting abilities? The station has survival simulation chambers. We could observe your techniques. Elena nodded slowly. I'd be happy to show you what human hunting looks like, she said. Pick any scenario you want. The silence in the meeting room stretched longer than Elena expected. Hundreds of alien faces stared at her with expressions ranging from confusion to outright disbelief. She could almost feel their thoughts. This small, soft creature claiming to be a deadly predator? Ambassador Thexalon's insect-like body clicked and buzzed as he communicated with other Zephyrian representatives through their hive-mind connection. When he spoke again, his translated voice carried clear skepticism. You claim to be an apex predator, yet you possess no visible hunting adaptations. No enhanced musculature, no natural weapons, no specialized sensory organs. How does your species achieve predatory success? Elena remained standing at the front of the room. She looked completely relaxed, hands at her sides, but something in her posture suggested coiled energy waiting to be released. That's exactly the point, she said. Every species here evolved to be perfect hunters in one specific environment. Crystal worms for rocky worlds, void stalkers for low-gravity moons, storm riders for gas giants. But what happens when you take them out of those environments? A Veltar representative spoke up. These aliens looked like elongated gray beings with large heads and multiple sets of arms. Our time stalkers can adapt their temporal manipulation to various environments. But only within certain parameters, Elena replied. They still need solid matter to affect. Take them into pure energy fields or quantum foam, and their abilities become useless. She began walking slowly around the speaking area, her movement smooth and controlled. Several aliens tracked her motion with predatory instincts of their own. Humans evolved on a world with incredibly diverse environments. Frozen polar regions, scorching deserts, dense forests, open grasslands, underground cave systems, high mountains, deep oceans. Our planet forced us to become adaptable or die. A Xanthari representative's crystalline form chimed like breaking glass. Adaptation is not the same as hunting prowess. Many species adapt. Few become true apex predators. Elena stopped walking and faced the crystal being directly. You're right. Adaptation alone isn't enough. But humans didn't just adapt to survive in different environments. We adapted to hunt in all of them. We became persistence hunters. Ambassador Crix leaned forward in his seat. Explain this term. Most predators rely on burst hunting. Quick strikes, ambush attacks, overwhelming force applied in short periods. They catch prey or they don't, then they rest and recover. Humans developed a different strategy. Elena's voice grew quieter, forcing the aliens to lean closer to hear her through their translation devices. We hunt by never giving up. We track prey across vast distances and long periods of time. We don't need to be faster than our target. We just need to be more persistent. Eventually, everything gets tired. Everything makes mistakes. Everything stops running. The room had grown completely silent. Even the background hum of the station's life support system seemed muted. You speak of theoretical hunting methods, Thexelon said. Yet you have provided no demonstration of these abilities. Many species claim superior hunting strategies. Elena smiled that predatory smile again. Then let's test them. She turned to address the entire assembly. I accept any challenge you want to design. Use your simulation chambers. Create scenarios based on your homeworld's hunting grounds. Bring in recreations of your apex predators. I'll show you what human hunting looks like. Excited chatter erupted throughout the room. The translation devices worked overtime as dozens of species began discussing the proposal in their native languages. Ambassador Crix called for order. This is highly unusual. The simulation chambers are designed for training and research, not for demonstrations to visiting dignitaries. I'm not asking for special treatment, Elena said. I'm offering to prove my claims. Isn't that what good science requires? Testing hypotheses through controlled experiments? A representative from the Nexali spoke up. These beings looked like living shadows with glowing eyes. What would you require for these simulations? Basic environmental protection suitable for each scenario. Standard fabricator access to create simple tools from available materials. Nothing that wouldn't be available to a stranded explorer. Thexelon's buzzing grew more agitated. You expect to hunt apex predators with fabricated tools. This proposal borders on suicide. Then you shouldn't have any trouble winning, Elena replied calmly. The challenge was too tempting for the assembled aliens to resist. Elena could see the predatory interest in their various eyes, optical sensors, and other sensory organs. They wanted to see this soft human fail. Very well, Ambassador Crix announced. We will arrange 3 hunting scenarios. Each will be based on environments where our respective apex predators dominate. He gestured to the Xanthari representative. The first trial will take place in a crystal maze environment, hunting simulation of our crystal worm predators. The Kethmar representative stepped forward. The second trial will occur in a psychic dampening field, where mental predators hold absolute advantage. Finally, an atmosphere swimmer's voice bubbled through their translation system. The third trial will be conducted in 3-dimensional space with asteroid obstacles, simulating our Storm Riders' hunting grounds. Elena nodded at each announcement. Acceptable. When do we start? The simulations will need several hours to properly configure, Crix said. We must ensure accurate representations of our predators and environments. Take all the time you need, Elena said. I'll use the preparation time to study the scenarios and plan my approach. As the various alien representatives began discussing technical details, Elena noticed something interesting. The way they talked about their predators had changed. Before, there had been pride and boasting about superior hunting abilities. Now there was a subtle undercurrent of nervousness. They were beginning to realize they might have underestimated the human. Dr. Velthera, a scientific observer from the Neutral Galactic Research Institute, approached Elena as the meeting broke up. Commander Vasquez, I must ask, are you certain about this course of action? These simulations will feature predators that have killed real beings from their respective species. The safety protocols can only do so much. Elena looked at the concerned alien scientist. Dr. Velthera's species resembled tall, thin humanoids with pale blue skin and large, intelligent eyes. Doctor, I appreciate your concern, but humans have a saying. The best way to prove you're right is to show your work. I'm about to show my work. But what if you're wrong? What if human hunting methods prove insufficient against these evolved predators? Elena's expression grew serious for the first time since the meeting began. Then I'll learn something valuable before I die. But I don't think that's going to happen. Why are you so confident? Elena looked around the room at the various alien species preparing their hunting simulations. Some were arguing about specific environmental details. Others were debating the psychological profiles of their predators. All of them were treating this like a scientific experiment, because they're thinking like prey, Elena said quietly. They're planning how their predators will hunt me. But they're not considering how I'll hunt their predators. Dr. Velthera's large eyes widened slightly. You intend to become the hunter rather than the hunted? Doctor, that's what apex predators do. We don't run from other predators. We hunt them. As Elena walked away to prepare for the trials, Dr. Velthera made a note in her research files. Human confidence levels appear to increase when faced with mortal danger. This may be a critical factor in their claimed predatory success. The next few hours would determine whether humanity's representative was a true apex predator or simply an overconfident alien about to become a cautionary tale. Elena spent the preparation time doing something that surprised the observing aliens. She rested. While they expected her to frantically study the upcoming challenges, she found a quiet corner and entered what humans called meditation. She was preparing her mind for the hunt. The simulation chamber hummed with energy as the Zenthari environmental parameters loaded into the system. Elena stood at the entrance wearing a basic environmental suit that would protect her from the sharp crystal formations. The suit was simple, just enough to keep her alive in the artificial environment. Through the observation windows, hundreds of alien spectators watched with intense curiosity. Many had never seen a human before, and none had seen one claim to be an apex predator. The viewing area buzzed with quiet conversations and the clicking sounds of translation devices. Ambassador Crix's voice came through the communication system. Commander Vasquez, the simulation is now active. You are facing a recreation of Zenthkar's crystal maze, complete with a behavioral simulation of our apex predator, the crystal worm. Elena looked around the chamber. The space had transformed into an alien landscape of towering crystal formations. Sharp geometric structures jutted up from the floor in complex patterns, creating a three-dimensional maze that extended in all directions. The crystals glowed with inner light, casting rainbow reflections that made depth perception difficult. The crystal worm, Crix continued, can sense vibrations through the crystal network across the entire maze. It moves through solid crystal as easily as you move through air. The creature is 30 meters long and can strike from any direction without warning. Elena knelt down and placed her palm against the crystal floor. The surface was smooth but not perfectly flat. She could feel tiny vibrations running through the material. The crystals were all connected, forming a massive sensing network. How long do I have? She asked. The simulation runs until you successfully hunt the creature or until... Crix paused diplomatically. Until it hunts me, Elena finished. Understood. She stood up and began examining the crystal formations more carefully. The maze wasn't random. There were patterns in how the crystals had grown. Some areas were more densely packed, others more open. The lighting came from within the crystals themselves, which meant breaking them might affect visibility. From the fabricator alcove, Elena requested simple tools: a coil of synthetic rope, a small hammer, metal spikes, and several small metal balls. The watching aliens murmured among themselves. These were primitive tools compared to the advanced technology available on the station. Elena tested the hammer against a small crystal formation. The impact sent a clear ringing sound through the maze, and she felt answering vibrations through the crystal network. Somewhere in the maze, the simulated crystal worm had registered that sound. Interesting, she said quietly. The first rule of hunting was to understand your environment. Elena began mapping the maze by sound. She threw one of the metal balls into a distant corridor and listened as it bounced off crystal walls. The echoes painted a picture of the space beyond her vision. She repeated this process in multiple directions, building a mental map of the maze structure. Each thrown ball sent vibrations through the crystal network, and she noted how the patterns changed based on the maze's geometry. The watching aliens grew restless. This wasn't the desperate struggle they had expected. The human seemed to be playing rather than fighting for her life. That changed when the first attack came. A section of crystal floor 20 meters away suddenly erupted upward. A massive serpentine form burst through the solid surface. The crystal worm simulation was perfectly realistic. The creature was enormous, its body covered in crystalline armor that reflected the maze's light. Its head was equipped with sensors that detected the slightest vibration. But Elena wasn't there when it struck. She had moved 3 corridors away, placing her steps carefully on areas where the crystal formations would disperse her vibrations across multiple paths. The worm's sensors detected movement, but the signals were scattered and confused. Persistence hunting, Elena murmured to herself. Step 1. Don't get caught in the first attack. The crystal worm simulation was programmed with the hunting behaviors of its real counterpart. After the failed strike, it settled into the crystal network to wait for clearer vibration patterns. This was how crystal worms hunted. Powerful burst attacks followed by patient waiting. Elena began the next phase of her hunt. She used the hammer to tap out complex rhythm patterns on different crystal formations. To the watching aliens, it looked like random noise. But Elena was creating a symphony of false signals throughout the maze. The worm responded to the strongest vibration sources, bursting through crystal walls to attack spots where Elena had been minutes before. Each failed attack left the creature slightly more frustrated and less patient. She's making it angry, observed Dr. Velthara from the observation deck. Angry. Predators make mistakes, replied Commander Hayes, Elena's human colleague who had arrived to watch. Elena's not trying to overpower that thing. She's trying to outthink it. For over an hour, Elena played this game of misdirection. She learned the maze's layout through sound and vibration. She discovered which crystal formations were load-bearing and which were decorative. Most importantly, she learned the worm's attack patterns. The creature was incredibly powerful but followed predictable behaviors. It always attacked the strongest vibration source. It always emerged from below when possible, and it always retreated to the same type of crystal formation to rest between attacks. Elena began to exploit these patterns. She used her metal spikes to create weak points in specific crystal structures. Then she led the worm on a chase through the maze using sound to guide its attacks. Each failed strike weakened the formations she had prepared. The watching aliens began to understand what they were seeing. This wasn't a battle between predator and prey. This was a chess match, and the human was thinking several moves ahead. The end game came when Elena led the crystal worm into a section of the maze she had carefully prepared. The creature burst through a crystal wall to attack her, but found itself in a corridor where every supporting structure had been weakened. Elena struck the final spike with her hammer, and the entire section collapsed. The crystal worm found itself trapped under tons of crystal debris, its movement restricted. It wasn't dead. The simulation's safety protocols prevented actual death, but it was completely helpless. Elena approached the trapped creature calmly. In a real hunt, this would be when she made the killing strike. Instead, she simply placed her hand on the worm's head. "Hunt complete," she said. The simulation ended, and the crystal maze dissolved back into the chamber's normal walls. Elena stood alone in the center of the space, breathing hard but victorious. The observation deck was completely silent. Ambassador Crix's voice came through the speakers, but for the first time since Elena had met him, he sounded uncertain. How did you know the structural weak points? Crystal formation analysis requires advanced geological knowledge. Elena removed her helmet and looked up at the observation windows. Her hair was damp with sweat, but her eyes held that same predatory gleam. "I didn't know the weak points when I started," she said. "I learned them by watching how the worm's attacks affected the crystals. Every hunt teaches you something about your environment." She began removing the environmental suit as she continued talking. "Your crystal worm is an amazing predator, but it's specialized for one type of hunting, ambush attacks in crystal environments. It's perfect for that environment." Elena folded the suit neatly and placed it in the storage alcove. But perfect specialization creates predictable behavior. And predictable behavior is what persistence hunters exploit. Thexelon's buzzing filled the communication system. "You did not overpower our apex predator. You used its own abilities against it." "That's what humans do," Elena replied. "We don't try to be better predators than other predators. We try to be smarter." Dr. Velthara was making rapid notes on her research device. The implications of what she had just witnessed were staggering. The human hadn't relied on superior physical abilities or advanced technology. She had used intelligence, patience, and adaptability to defeat a creature that had evolved specifically to be an unstoppable hunter. The next trial will be more challenging, warned the Kethmar representative. Physical traps will not work against psychic predators. Elena's smile returned. That predatory expression that had started this entire demonstration. I'm looking forward to it, she said. As the chamber reset for the next simulation, the watching aliens began to reassess everything they thought they knew about apex predators. Perhaps size and strength weren't the only measures of hunting ability. Perhaps intelligence and persistence were more dangerous than claws and fangs. Perhaps they had seriously underestimated humanity. The second simulation chamber looked completely different from the crystal maze. This room was darker, with surfaces that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange geometric patterns covered the walls, and the air itself felt heavy and oppressive. Elena suited up in different protective gear this time, equipment designed to function in psychically active environments. The suit included neural dampeners that would prevent her mind from being completely overwhelmed, but they offered limited protection against a true psychic predator. This environment simulates the hunting grounds of our void stalkers, announced the Kethmar representative. These creatures exist partially in psychic space. They feed on fear and confusion before consuming physical matter. Elena checked her equipment one final time. For this hunt, she had requested different tools: mirrors, light sources, a basic audio recorder, and something that had puzzled the aliens: several photographs from Earth. The psychic dampening field is now active, the Kethmar continued. This will limit your natural mental defenses. The Voidstalker simulation includes full psychological warfare capabilities. It will attempt to disorient you with false sensations, manufactured fears, and mental manipulation. Through the observation windows, the assembled aliens watched with even greater interest than before. The crystal maze had been impressive, but that was simply a matter of physics and strategy. This trial would test something far more fundamental: the human's mental resilience. Elena entered the simulation chamber as the environment fully activated. Immediately, she felt the oppressive weight of the psychic field. It was like having a constant whisper in the back of her mind, trying to convince her that danger lurked everywhere. The chamber had transformed into a nightmare landscape. Twisted corridors stretched in impossible directions. Walls seemed to shift and breathe. Shadows moved independently of their light sources. This was an environment designed to break the minds of prey before the predator struck. Elena closed her eyes and took several deep breaths. When she opened them again, something had changed in her expression. The watching aliens couldn't identify what was different, but Dr. Velthera noted in her observations, "Human subject appears to have entered altered mental state, possibly preparation for combat." What the aliens were seeing was Elena switching into what humans called hunt mode. Her breathing became more controlled. Her movements became more deliberate. Most importantly, her mind became focused on a single objective: finding and defeating the Voidstalker. The first psychic attack came within minutes. Elena suddenly saw her worst childhood fear: being lost in a dark forest while terrible things hunted her. The vision was incredibly realistic, complete with sound, smells, and the physical sensation of cold air against her skin. But instead of panicking, Elena smiled. She pulled out one of the photographs she had brought, a picture of her family on Earth. She looked at it for several seconds, then spoke aloud. "Thank you for showing me your first technique. Fear projection based on childhood trauma. Very effective against most species, I'm sure." The psychic pressure increased, trying to make the vision more overwhelming. Elena continued talking to her unseen opponent. "The problem is, you're using my own memories against me. But I know those memories better than you do. I know that particular fear ends with my father finding me safe. I know how the story turns out." She began walking through the nightmare landscape, ignoring the shifting walls and moving shadows. Her steps were confident, as if she was walking through a familiar neighborhood instead of a psychic maze. The Voidstalker simulation tried different approaches. It projected images of Elena's friends and colleagues in danger, hoping to trigger protective instincts that would cloud her judgment. It created false sensations of being attacked from behind. It tried to convince her that she was falling through empty space. Elena countered each attack with the same calm analysis. Guilt manipulation. trying to make me feel responsible for imaginary dangers to people I care about. Nice try, but humans have been dealing with guilt as a survival mechanism for thousands of years. She set up one of her mirrors to catch a reflection of something that shouldn't cast a reflection, the Void Stalker itself. Vertigo induction, making me think I'm falling when I'm standing still. Unfortunately for you, humans evolved with excellent inner ear balance systems. We can fly in three-dimensional space without getting disoriented. The watching aliens were fascinated and disturbed. They had expected to see the human break down under psychic assault. Instead, she was treating the attack like a scientific experiment, analyzing each technique as it was used against her. "This is not how prey behaves," whispered Ambassador Thexlon. "Because she's not acting like prey," replied Commander Hayes. "She's studying her hunter." The Void Stalker simulation grew more aggressive. It began using its most powerful ability, direct mental invasion. Instead of creating false visions, it tried to overwhelm Elena's consciousness with raw fear and confusion. This was when Elena revealed the true nature of human psychological warfare. She pulled out her audio recorder and began speaking into it, her voice cutting through the psychic assault. Personal log, hunting expedition, psychic predator. Subject attempts to invade consciousness through direct neural interface. Recommend counter strategy. Overwhelming target with focused predatory intent. Elena's mental state shifted again. Instead of defending against the psychic attacks, she began projecting her own thoughts outward. The watching aliens couldn't detect what was happening, but the Void Stalker simulation suddenly found itself experiencing something it had never encountered before. It was feeling Elena's mind focused entirely on hunting and killing it. Most prey animals, when attacked by a Void Stalker, broadcast fear, confusion, and desperation. These emotions were exactly what the predator fed on. But Elena was broadcasting something completely different. Cold, calculating, persistent determination to destroy her opponent. The psychic predator found itself becoming unsettled. This prey was thinking like a predator, and that made the Void Stalker feel like prey. Elena began hunting in earnest. She used the mirrors to track movement that couldn't be seen directly. She followed the patterns of psychic attacks to determine the Void Stalker's location. Most importantly, she began using psychological pressure against her opponent. "I know you're here," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "I can feel you trying to read my mind. But while you're reading my thoughts, I'm reading your behavior patterns." She moved through the nightmare landscape with purpose now, closing in on the areas where the psychic attacks were strongest. "Your species evolved to hunt prey that fears you. But what happens when you encounter prey that hunts you back?" The Void Stalker simulation tried to retreat, but Elena had anticipated this. She had been herding it toward a section of the chamber where her equipment was positioned. When the creature tried to escape, it found itself caught in the reflection pattern she had created with her mirrors. The mirrors didn't trap the Void Stalker physically, but they reflected its psychic presence back on itself, creating a feedback loop that disoriented the predator. Elena moved in for the final phase of her hunt. Instead of trying to physically attack the partially psychic creature, she used pure mental pressure. She focused her thoughts entirely on the concept of hunting the Void Stalker, projecting that intent with such intensity that the creature's own psychic abilities worked against it. The Void Stalker found itself overwhelmed by Elena's predatory focus. It had never encountered prey that thought like this, completely dedicated to its destruction, analyzing its weaknesses, adapting to its attack patterns. In desperation, the simulation tried its most powerful fear attack, showing Elena her own death in vivid detail. Elena looked at the vision calmly and spoke her final words to the creature. "Thank you for showing me how you plan to kill me. Now I know exactly how to kill you first." The Void Stalker simulation broke. Its programming couldn't handle prey that refused to be prey. The psychic predator retreated into the deepest part of the chamber and went dormant, effectively surrendering. "Hunt complete," Elena announced. The nightmare landscape dissolved, leaving Elena alone in the normal chamber. She was breathing harder this time. The psychic battle had taken more effort than the physical one, but she was clearly victorious. The observation deck was even quieter than before. The Kethmar representative's large eyes were wider than the aliens had ever seen them. When he spoke, His voice carried undertones of genuine fear. How did you resist the direct neural invasion? Most species have their consciousness overwhelmed within seconds. Elena gathered her equipment as she answered. You assumed that human minds work like your prey minds. When you attacked me psychically, you expected to find fear and confusion. Instead, you found a predator that was studying you while you were studying it. She paused to look up at the observation windows. Your void stalker is incredibly dangerous to prey animals, but it's never hunted another apex predator before. When you tried to read my mind, you found something that was already planning to kill you. Dr. Valthera's notes were becoming frantic. The implications were staggering. Humans appeared to be able to turn their predatory instincts into a form of psychological weapon. One more trial, announced the atmosphere swimmer representative. Three-dimensional combat in the final simulation chamber was the largest yet. Instead of walls, the space opened into what appeared to be a vast asteroid field floating in deep space. Chunks of rock drifted in complex three-dimensional patterns, some as small as pebbles, others as large as buildings. The artificial gravity was minimal, allowing true three-dimensional movement. Elena floated near the chamber's entry point, secured in a full spacesuit designed for zero-gravity maneuvering. This time her equipment was different again. Magnetic grapples, small thruster packs, navigation beacons, and something that had surprised the equipment techs, a large supply of water and nutrient packs. This environment replicates the gas giant moon system where our storm riders hunt, announced the atmosphere swimmer representative. These creatures are living lightning, capable of moving at tremendous speeds through three-dimensional space. They can change their form to navigate around obstacles and strike from any direction. Elena tested her maneuvering thrusters and checked the magnetic grapples. In zero gravity, movement became a careful balance of momentum and directional control.
One mistake could send her spinning helplessly into the void. Storm riders are pursuit hunters, the atmosphere swimmer continued.
They chase prey through asteroid fields until exhaustion forces a mistake. They are faster, more maneuverable, and have perfect three-dimensional spatial awareness. Through the observation windows, the assembled aliens watched with intense interest. This would be the ultimate test. Physical strength and clever tactics had defeated the crystal worm. Psychological warfare had overcome the void stalker. But what could the human do against a predator that simply outclassed her in every physical capability? Elena pushed off from the entry platform and began drifting into the asteroid field. Her movements were careful and controlled, using minimal thrust to conserve fuel. The watching aliens noted that she wasn't trying to move quickly or aggressively. What is her strategy? Asked Ambassador Crick's Commander Hayes, watching from the observation deck, smiled grimly. She's not trying to outrun it. She's trying to outlast it. The first Storm Rider attack came without warning. A brilliant streak of electric energy burst from behind a large asteroid, moving faster than the human eye could track. Elena barely had time to register the approach before the creature was upon her, but Elena wasn't where the Storm Rider expected her to be. She had used her grapple to anchor herself to a small asteroid and pull herself out of the direct approach path. The Storm Rider's attack missed by meters, the creature's electrical form crackling with frustrated energy. Interesting, Elena said into her suit's communication system. Fast attack, but had to maintain linear momentum. Can't make sharp turns at high speed. The Storm Rider wheeled around for another attack, its form shifting and crackling as it built up electrical charge. This time it approached from a different angle, trying to corner Elena between two large asteroids. Elena used her thrusters to push off one asteroid and grab onto another, swinging herself around the rock formation like a pendulum. The Storm Rider's second attack passed through empty space. Attack pattern shows charging time between strikes, Elena observed. Creature needs several seconds to build up electrical potential for each high-speed assault. For the next hour, this pattern continued. The Storm Rider would attack with tremendous speed and power. Elena would use the asteroid field's geography to avoid the strike by the smallest possible margin. Then she would observe and analyze while the creature prepared for its next assault. The watching aliens grew increasingly puzzled. Elena wasn't fighting back or trying to escape. She was simply avoiding death while taking careful notes. Why doesn't she attack? Asked a Xanthari representative. Because she can't, replied Thexalon. The Storm Rider is faster and more powerful. Direct confrontation would be suicide. Then what is she doing? Dr. Valthera had been watching Elena's movement patterns carefully. I believe she's collecting data. She's learning how the Storm Rider hunts. As the hunt continued, Elena began to reveal her true strategy. She wasn't trying to defeat the Storm Rider quickly, she was trying to exhaust it. Each time the creature attacked, Elena would position herself so that its missed strike would carry it far past her position. The Storm Rider would have to expend energy to change direction and return for another attack. Meanwhile, Elena moved with minimal energy expenditure, using gravitational pulls and momentum conservation to maintain her position. Persistence hunting, Elena muttered to herself. Not about being faster, about being more efficient. The Storm Rider's attacks began to show signs of frustration. Instead of the precise, calculated strikes from the beginning, the creature started making wider, more aggressive passes. It was burning energy at an unsustainable rate. Elena began the next phase of her hunt. Instead of simply avoiding the Storm Rider, she started leading it through specific parts of the asteroid field. She would position herself near clusters of rocks, forcing the creature to navigate around obstacles during its high-speed attacks. She's making it work harder, Commander Hayes observed. Every attack now requires complex navigation. Hours passed. The Storm Rider's electrical form began to dim slightly as its energy reserves depleted. Its attacks became less frequent, the charging time between strikes growing longer. Elena, meanwhile, had been carefully rationing her supplies. She ate small amounts of nutrients and drank water regularly, maintaining her energy levels for the long hunt ahead. "How long can this continue?" asked Ambassador Crix. "As long as it takes," replied Commander Hayes. "That's what persistence hunting means. Humans can literally hunt prey to death through exhaustion." The watching aliens began to understand what they were seeing. This wasn't a battle between predator and prey. This was a contest of endurance, and the human was winning. By the 4th hour, the Storm Rider's behavior had changed completely. Instead of aggressive attacks, it was making cautious approaches, conserving energy between strikes. The creature was beginning to understand that it was in trouble. Elena sensed the change and began the final phase of her hunt. She stopped simply avoiding the Storm Rider and started actively pursuing it. Using her grapples and thrusters in short, efficient bursts, she began following the creature through the asteroid field. Not fast enough to catch it, but fast enough to prevent it from resting. "Now you're the prey," Elena said quietly. The Storm Rider tried to escape, but Elena had spent hours learning the asteroid field's layout. She knew which paths led to dead ends and which offered escape routes. She herded the exhausted creature toward areas where its movement options were limited. The final confrontation came when the Storm Rider, desperate and nearly depleted, made one last powerful attack. Elena used her grapple to swing around a large asteroid, letting the creature's own momentum carry it into a cluster of rocks where its movement was restricted. In the confined space, the Storm Rider couldn't build up the speed it needed for effective attacks. Elena closed in steadily, using precise thruster burns to maintain constant pressure. The creature tried to retreat, but Elena had positioned herself to block the escape routes. For the first time in the hunt, the Storm Rider found itself cornered by its prey. "This is how humans hunt," Elena said as she approached the exhausted predator. "We don't give up. We don't get tired. We don't stop coming." The Storm Rider made one final, desperate attack, but its electrical discharge was weak and poorly aimed. Elena avoided it easily and moved in for the symbolic kill. She placed her hand on the creature's dimmed electrical form. Hunt complete. The simulation ended, leaving Elena floating alone among the asteroids. She was tired but victorious, having proven her point in the most definitive way possible. The observation deck was completely silent for a long moment. Then Dr. Velthara began speaking, her voice filled with scientific awe. "Remarkable. The human didn't defeat the Storm Rider through superior speed, strength, or special abilities. She defeated it through sheer persistence and endurance." Elena returned to the chamber's docking area and began removing her spacesuit. As she spoke, her words carried the weight of revelation. Every species here evolved to be apex predators in their specific environments. Crystal worms in rocky worlds, void stalkers in psychic spaces, Storm Riders in three-dimensional asteroid fields. You're all perfectly adapted to your hunting grounds. She hung up the spacesuit and faced the observation windows directly. But humans evolved differently. We didn't become perfect predators for one environment. We became adequate predators for every environment. And that makes us the most dangerous hunters in the galaxy. Ambassador Crix's voice came through the speakers, but it no longer carried skepticism. Now there was something that might have been fear. How is this possible? How can generalists defeat specialists? Elena's predatory smile had never left her face throughout all 3 trials. Because specialists have limits. They're perfect in their element, but vulnerable outside it. Generalists adapt. We learn, we persist. And most importantly, she paused, looking directly at each alien species represented in the observation deck. We never stop hunting. The implications hit the assembled aliens like a physical blow. If humans could defeat their apex predators through persistence,